So, when doing finances, sometimes I tell people to think of it like they are going grocery shopping. There are financial decisions that you can make that can feed you. And I don't just mean food, I mean feed you. Feed who you are as a person, make you feel more whole. There are financial decisions that you can make that help you stockpile extra for later, like putting food in a pantry. There are some financial decisions that are going to harm you, like a food intolerance or a food allergy. And why would you go to the grocery store and pick out something that you know you're allergic to? Maybe you are feeling emotionally crappy and you want comfort food. But if that comfort food is harming you, should you be as likely to buy it? Caring about yourself means choosing things that help you. Going to the grocery store and buying fruits and vegetables instead of a pack of Oreos is like going financially and choosing to invest into a low-risk thing instead of just going out and buying a different car. The car is a massive money sink, and the investments will long run help you tremendously. And you might not get the immediate gratification from the fruits and vegetables, but you know it is going to add longevity. You might not get the immediate gratification that you'd get from the new car smell, but putting into your investments is going to give you financial longevity. You know, you're allergic to peanuts. Peanuts is a pretty common allergy. And so then why would you buy something with peanut butter? And yet you can see the disastrousness of credit card debt to other people, and yet you don't let it fully sink in so that you don't have to think about it, and when you spend on your credit card, it's okay. I've seen people before. There was actually this woman once, and she was like in massive credit card debt, like over $15,000 in credit card debt. And she's like, oh yeah, well, you know, I want the points. I want the cash back and the travel points. And I was just like, okay, but, you know, you don't have to go into debt to get those things. Why are you spending so much on your credit card that you're now paying interest? The interest is way more expensive than the cash back that you're getting is valuable. You need to not buy something with the credit card unless you can immediately pay for the something that you bought with the credit card so that you're not getting any interest charges. If you're doing that, then by all means, get the cash back, get the points. But if you're going into debt, saying that you're doing it for some points or some cash back is just an excuse. In actuality, you're doing something you're allergic to. People make excuses sometimes that are really weird. When you try to help them with money, it sometimes helps to create like analogies and stuff. So I have these weird little analogies like horses in the fields and going to the grocery store because it makes it more real. Sometimes I encounter people and finances to them is like this ethereal thing. It's like not part of reality to them. It hasn't fully sunken in. It's almost like they're half dissociated away from it. I always tell people when they're, you know, like, oh, I'm doing a diet. And I'm like, no, you gotta have a lifestyle or else all the weight will just come back. Like, statistically, per research. And they're like, oh, well, that seems like really drastic. And I'm like, well, it doesn't have to be this diet. Pick a limit. Say, you know what? I'm not buying anything that has over this much sugar in it. And they're like, oh, well, how would I know where to put that boundary line? I'm like, what does the, you know, government recommend for your sugar intake in a day? And they're like, oh, well, what if it's too low? Now, I personally would rather the World Health Organization's of don't eat more added sugar than such and such, because unfortunately the FDA in the United States is way higher. But a lot of Americans can't handle the way lower, so they are way more comfortable with the way higher. So I get it. In the United States, we eat a lot of sugar, a lot. So if you just say, I'm not going to purchase anything that has more than this amount of sugar in it, automatically you're creating a much healthier system for yourself, but you're not saying, oh, I have to go all the way to 0. Instead of saying, you know what, I am never allowed to spend it all. I have to penny pinch every single penny. I need to know where every single dollar allotment is, every single purchase. And you have to nickel and dime every single decision. And you're wasting so much energy on little $5 spends when you can afford not to do that. You're just torturing yourself. So set a limit. Say, you know what? If it's $20 or less, I can afford to not stress about those decisions. Maybe you can afford to say higher than that, but the point still remains the same. I have this much in savings. It will cover my expenses for 3 months if something bad happened. That's still scary to me. Okay, fine, make it 6 months. That's good, right? Well, I don't know. It's still a little, at that point you're showing insecurity, and it's not the money that's the problem. It's your fear. So set a limit. Say, okay, fine. We're going to make an extremely high limit. Well, what's an extremely high limit? How about a year? A year of expenses. But after that, you're cutting yourself off from continually saving and saving and saving, and you're going to start investing. Because at a certain point, you need to create a system. Because once you have a system, once things are more automatic, they're less stressful. It's less agonizing. Going to a grocery store with a set list and saying, okay, here we go, I got my stuff. Okay, I can check out now, is quicker. And it's also less stressful. The decisions are already made. Going to the grocery store and being like, I don't know what's for dinner this week, what looks good, I don't know, am I hungry, maybe this will be yummy. You know, you end up walking out with a whole bunch of snacks and junk food, and you end up walking out with a bunch of food that's not necessarily helping you. And a lot of times, you're like, forgetting parts of the dinner that you were planning on making, and then you got to go back and you got to spend more, and you feel guilty for how much you're wasting on groceries because you're being random about it. Whereas if you had a system and a lot of it was more automatic, it'd be less stressful, you'd spend less, you'd waste less time, and you'd feel better in the long term. Your longevity would be enhanced. Do the same thing financially. Say, okay, you know what? I've got debt. A lot of people can say, I've got debt. A lot of people can't say, here's the date that my debt is paid off. I help people budget, and when I talk to them about debt, it's weird how it seems like this big monster. And so when I was in college one time, someone said that most problems are looking like a big scary monster in a big black cloak, but if you pull the cloak off, underneath is a whole bunch of ants, and they're all sitting on each other's shoulders underneath this cloak. And if you can just turn things into those smaller units and then automate to at least some extent those smaller units, it's less overwhelming, it's less scary, it's less stressful. Some people, to save money, they are like, I have to go to all these different stores, I have to cut all these different coupons, I have to look for all these different like online, you know, sales and stuff, I have to nitpick all this different stuff. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes stress. Go shopping with your list in hand and to just one place, simple, pick it up, walk out. Some of the stuff will be cheaper, but some of it might have been cheaper somewhere else. But is the cost difference worth your stress level? Now, you might be so poor, you don't have a choice. I'm not talking to you. If you are so completely desperately poor that you are using like 90% of your income just on required expenses for you to exist, That's a different situation. You either need to earn more money or you need to live somewhere else. And that's a really hard thing. It is super hard when you have to get to that point with someone. It's horrible. There are people who are at 150% or 200% of what their income is, and they're just buried under debt. I'm not talking to that person. I'm saying if you are starting to come out of survival mode, if you are starting to get to the point where you either want functionality for your finances, or you're getting close to being able to be functional with your finances, or maybe you have hit that and you've been at that for years, but you've been scared to step into it. And you've just been continuing to live as if you're in survival mode when you're not anymore. Objectively, if you did the math and looked at the numbers, if you can afford your stuff that is like the necessities for getting along, the stuff that you say yes to because it helps create life for you, for your family, and that's like at like 60%, then from that point onward, you need to be thinking about other things, like investing in yourself, investing in other people, investing in the future. All of those things are super important. When you go grocery shopping, sometimes when you're going there, you're not even just buying for yourself, you're buying for other people. You can do that with your finances. And I don't just mean give to a charity. I mean, you could create legacy for your kids. You could create like an actual useful something to be left when you pass away. Create systems that are semi-automatic so that you're less stressed about money, and then invest into yourself and into healthy things. Pick the good for you food. Pick the good for you financial decisions.